Now joining us is NBC News Chief International Analyst and former Supreme Allied Commander of NATO, Admiral James Stavridis. Well, Admiral Stavridis, you're exactly the person I want to talk to right now because there's so much going on. There's what's happening in the Red Sea, the whole naval engagement that you're so familiar with, and criticism by some in the military, certainly some in politics, that the U.S. has not done enough for deterrence there. But Iran getting much more active, and now Israel getting more active, clearly.
Yeah, it's a lot of moving parts, as our previous correspondent just said. Let me start with the explosion in Tehran. To me, that does not feel like an Israeli operation. It's not targeted. It's a mass casualty event that would have deliberately killed many, many civilians, including children. It comes at a terrible time from an Israeli perspective. It just doesn't feel to me like an Israeli operation. I would guess it could be the work of the Islamic State, which is, of course, a Sunni radical organization that has no great affinity for Iran. It could be internal resistance. There are a number of explanations. So as all our correspondents are saying, we'll have to wait, hear more. But it just doesn't feel like the Israelis to me. But it's all part of this larger fabric of violence that's spreading across the region. And simply the fact that that explosion occurred, when you add it to what's happening in the Red Sea with the Houthi-backed, Iranian-backed piracy, add that to what's happening ashore in Gaza, of course, the attacks on U.S. forces. Andrea, I have to say that the chances of a wider regional war feel to me like they're ticking up from maybe 10 to 15% 2 months ago to something like 25 to 30% now. That's very uncomfortable.
And there had been an attempt by the CIA director, the head of Mossad, and others from Qatar to try to restart hostage negotiations. And that was, at least Hamas says, broken off certainly yesterday after what does appear to have been a targeted assassination.
Yeah, I think the losers terribly, tragically, in both of these explosions, both the one in Lebanon that killed the Hamas leader and this terrible one in Iran that killed civilians there. I think that is going to freeze the frame on hostage negotiations for the foreseeable future, and that's really unfortunate. Andrea, what I think the White House is going to be grappling with today, in addition to what you and I have just discussed, is how to respond to these pirate attacks at sea, these Houthi rebels. You can call them Iranian pirates if you want. They've been shooting missiles at U.S. warships, firing missiles at civilian merchant shipping. Effectively, they're shutting down the Red Sea. 15% of the global supply chain goes through there. The White House, I think, is going to have to move toward a response that's more aggressive against the Houthis ashore. That means going after an Iranian proxy. That is going to inflame tension. And I think President Biden is walking into that conversation with his team today.
Well, the U.S. Navy did return fire on Sunday, and there were some casualties there. You mean something that is more direct?
I do.
Not just returning
going
fire.
Ashore. Yeah, indeed. The U.S. Navy sent out a group of armed helicopters that sank Houthi speedboats that were attacking merchant shipping. That's good, entirely appropriate. But I think in order to really get the attention of the Houthis, and really we're talking the attention of Tehran, it's going to require strikes ashore against the Houthi land infrastructure, fuel depots, docks, the means that they are using to exploit, as well as most obviously their missile launch sites, which are directly targeting U.S. warships. That's unsustainable from a U.S. military perspective, in my view. And
just the IDF has now also announced that a hostage was killed on December 8th. Now, they don't say whether it's friendly fire, as those 3 other hostages had been tragically, or whether or not it was from Hamas. or from the result of wounds or some other factor. But that's just one more reason. And there was at least one interview that we did with the hostage family who were concerned that what happened yesterday would endanger the hostages and certainly make it harder to get them out.
Yeah, the only ray of hope I can offer there is simply the Israelis are moving to reduce the number of troops moving into Gaza. They're bringing more specialized forces in, special forces, engineers. Perhaps the chances of rescue might go up a bit. But in terms of negotiation at the moment, very difficult.